What would you say is the one key thing that we should be thinking about for 2025?
Look, it's probably not super sexy to say, but we continue to think end-to-end reconciliation is tremendously important for large merchants in particular. And maybe just one additional comment, cost observability, as we call it. I think banks, merchants, and others truly understanding how much they're paying for each transaction and to whom. So that's a big theme that we're working on in 25.
Well, I'll stick with the cross-border theme. And one of the things I talked about in my presentation was this evolution from borderless commerce to driverless commerce. So think the simplicity of a self-driving car applied to a commerce experience, right? So not only does that experience need to be frictionless from a payments perspective, but it anticipates some of the needs, provides those smart suggestions. And there are a lot of technological advances that I think allow for more of that experience to become reality. So I'm excited for that.
The big thing that sticks out to me, especially after spending the last week with a lot of merchants around the globe, is regulation. Is we're seeing major regulatory changes in every corner of the world. It's becoming increasingly more and more difficult for everybody to keep up with. So it's a big influencer on everything that's going on in the payments world today. So need to keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, the big payment theme and something that we see a lot of interest in, and it might sound overused, but the growth of AI and its application within payments. So both in terms of how we can use that to optimize payments, in terms of interpreting data and analyzing that, and then also in terms of new commerce experiences. So the concept of AI agents that might be able to make a payment on your behalf and how they'll actually play into things like authentication and other regulatory regimes if you're not actually the one making the payment. So it'll be really interesting, I think, in 2025.
This is really tough question. There are so many interesting topics going on. So if I had to pick one, I guess I will, mention account-to-account payments. Okay. They are growing in Europe in general. There are some very interesting initiatives I'm thinking about, for example, the launch of the European wallet called Wero. So in at least 4 different countries, in France, Germany, the Netherlands, and Belgium, I guess. So I think consumers will be really using more and more account-to-account payments, and maybe merchants also will be massively converted to this kind of payment means.
Well, I'll keep it specific to what I'm talking about, which is EV. I think the ease of payment is going to be something that comes through and is more prevalent going forward. So, and by that, I mean able to just drive your car up to a charger and through what's called plug and charge, plug your car in using the cable, and there's a security exchange that happens at that point, and it identifies your car, and you have a card stored against your account, and payments taken without you actually having to do anything. And I think that continuing to develop, in as much as there's proximity sensors in your car as well that might be able to identify you, as well as automatic number plate recognition software and those types of things. I think that's going to be something that's really prevalent going forwards.
I think, having sat through some presentations today, I think fraud is an area where we have to be particularly careful. For areas where you're getting AI and ChatGPT and other types of solutions that are so clever, so easy to dupe people into giving credentials and losing money, etc. It affects everyone, even from the 18-year-olds right through to people in their late 80s and 90s. And I think that area is becoming far more sophisticated. How best they can adapt it from a payments perspective, because it's going to start using payments, it's going to start using other ways that we act, and then lead to a scenario where they will, you will be convinced that they're real people and actually they're not. So I think fraud is an area. The other area, I think the market I sit in, I think I see some changing dynamics happening next year again, possibly consolidation. Largest acquirer, or one of the largest acquirers, now moving into different hands. I could see quite some big churn around the market, and the bigger players who are very good and sophisticated will continue to get bigger, because the others are quite far behind and have got a long way to go to catch up.
I think what we're seeing starting to happen, and what we expect to happen more next year, is more interoperability. So
where there's been monopolies in payments with, on the issuing side with certain banks or on the acquiring side with certain large acquirers, actually the kind of need for more modern modular technology means that a lot of providers are starting to open up kind of facets of their offering and start to enable them to be able to work kind of with other providers at the same time. So for example, we're seeing some of the more modern fintech acquirers start to offer their services in a very modular way so that a merchant or even an acquirer can take certain subsets of products and start to combine and kind of pull the best bits together from across the industry.
In my business, we see a certain amount of attempted fraud, and sometimes it's successful. I guess the assisted push payments issue and now banks being responsible for customer losses, for me, is really a message to them to wake up and start putting in place and start utilizing AI in a manner to actually stop that activity, because in many cases, it's perfectly easy to spot if you're looking at it with anything like an experienced or informed perspective. And quite honestly, it's really, I think, about time that we start to see not huge delays in transactions as a response to the new legislation, but transaction speeds not really slowing down much, but being caught in a very, very precise and intelligent net. And I see that as being the big challenge for banks. Rather than coughing up lots of money, they've got to stop the problem as opposed to merely just be held responsible for it.
For me, it's definitely around open data. My role is very much within the mobility segment, and I know that commercial drivers and consumers as well, they're looking for more data in terms of the transactions that they are making. So if I am running a fleet of vehicles, I want the information to know how many kilowatts have gone into that vehicle, how much petrol, diesel have gone into that vehicle, and I need to be able to calculate the total cost of ownership. From a regulatory perspective and sustainability more broadly, I can then use that information to report on my sustainability impact, and I can use that information to drive more efficiency in terms of how I operate my fleet. So for me, it's very much around open data as we look forward into 2025.
I definitely think it is thinking ahead, right? Building your payment strategy specifically for SaaS platforms starts with understanding what your current relationship with payment providers is. Are you making that step of bringing it in-house and making it fully an embedded experience for the SMBs that you might serve? But don't stop thinking there, right? Think ahead as well. What are you further trying to achieve for those SMBs? Where do they feel the pains, right? Are they cash strapped? Are they looking for merchant financing? And so I think that is an opportunity that, a lot of SaaS platforms have an opportunity to tap into, and excited to see where that journey and that growth is going to lead to.
So I think we're starting to see it already, but personal view is that there's going to be a fair bit of consolidation, not necessarily just within the payment space themselves, i.e. PSP to PSP, acquirer to acquirer. I think we're consistently seeing big acquirers starting to move closer to the merchants with software acquisitions, ISV acquisitions. I think expect to see that hell of a lot more next year when they're looking to disintermediate these platforms that have built these really big merchant bases. They'll look to purchase those, use the solution, and get closer to the merchant and the revenue, I think. Probably my biggest takeaway and one to look out for.
Well, I think in Red Badger's world, we build new propositions or renovate tired propositions for large businesses. And I guess they've all integrated payments to a certain extent. But as I mentioned before, the opportunity with embedded finance now is to move payments from a cost center into a value creation. So focusing on that customer experience, taking advantage of all the new technology that's available, and really delivering what your customers want.
Well, there are many, but the one that I really believe is shifting from offline to more digital payments will accelerate. We will see more and more shift from the offline to vertical SaaS software companies, more for digital payments and more online payments. Yeah.
For me, it's embedded payments. We've gone from kind of the integrated payments world. We've got different models out there. People either selling their payments through software organizations or equally working very hand in hand with strategic partners. And look, we hear the buzzword of frictionless this and payments. They're still relevant. But the difference, I think, in 2025 is it's going to be a better mix of making it a much more frictionless consumer journey. But more interestingly, I think in 2025, the distribution element coming to that. So I expect to see more agreements from payment competitors or cooperators in the marketplace. And I think we'll see more use cases of where software and the payments infrastructure is coming together, and hopefully some exciting use cases, and ultimately it'll be all our end customers who will benefit from that.
I mean, it sounds a bit self-serving, but I'm going to say actually that the rise and the continued rise of PayFac and more predominantly now the PayFac as a service. I think when we were building our infrastructure, there wasn't the choice of a PayFac as a service. So I think what some of the large vendors have done there has provided some real openness to be able to become a payment provider in the industry. So I think I'm looking forward to seeing how that matures through 25.
Yeah, it'd be remiss not to point towards like artificial intelligence. The amount of manual processes that still exist in acquiring, and particularly in SMB, the number of hands that still touch every single application is frankly startling. The opportunity to streamline that and automate many of the processes that we currently have across sales, pricing, and boarding from an acquiring perspective is really exciting and will be a fundamental change in 25.